What up, nation? You're watching AMTV Alternative Media Television. It is Wednesday, I think it's the 24th of August, and yes, I stole that from Philip DeFranco. He always says, "What up, nation?" So today's video, you're getting the full, uncut, unadulterated, triple hardcore, XXX hardcore info that you can't get anywhere else. People say that you've been enjoying these videos, so I will do more of them, and you can just kind of be a part of my innermost personal thoughts. So I'm on my way to the studio. Today I'm going to talk about how the financial system implodes after the election. It doesn't matter if Donald Trump and or Hillary Clinton gets into office, but it's being artificially held up by the banksters, by the gangsters, for a reason. And in my humble belief, the reason why they're going to allow it to levitate a little bit more, and through their actions, by not raising interest rates really at all, they've only bumped once, and it's been a measly 25 basis points. Remember how they kept telling us for years now, this has been going on for years, they're gonna hike rates. Yeah, they're gonna hike it, to slow things down, and we're gonna normalize interest rates. No, they're not. In fact, I think it's unlikely that they ever normalize interest rates in our lifetime, which is why, instead of them hiking rates, they're going to create a bubble so large and so big, it'll be like Fukushima times a million. It'll be like bombs being dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima times a million. It'll be an atomic weapon launched, the equivalent, on the American people and those of you tuning in around the world. In fact, I think it was Czechoslovakia, I was reading earlier this morning, has put out a warning to its people, urging them to prepare. Vladimir Putin, for example, of Russia also urging his people, because they're not afraid to tell their people the truth, to stockpile food, water, etc., to basically prepare for the worst, because they are building a bubble so large, so massive, that it pales in comparison to what we saw with the tech years in that implosion, pales in comparison to what we saw, I think, in the 1930s with the stock market crash in 1929, pales in comparison to what we saw in 2008, 2009. And they're going to string this thing along, and they're going to hold it together just long enough to slide in very sick, hashtag sick Hillary Clinton, hashtag sick Hillary, hashtag Hillary illness, hashtag Hillary's health. Now, if they were to let the money changers, the Federal Reserve, the criminal institution that it is, if they were to let and allow the market forces to take root right now, it would, and the market say crashed and the bottom fell out, even if there was just a recession, even if it was just a measly correction, which we don't get anymore, they don't even exist because they can't allow it to happen, it would hurt Hillary Clinton's chances of winning the White House. And it's why I think they're stringing it along because, first of all, everything's artificial. There is no reality when it comes to the money changers. It's all illusory, and it's important to understand that money is created out of thin air. The banks, the Federal Reserve prints the money from nothing, it's backed by nothing. The banks borrow it for nothing, and then they charge interest on it, which is exactly why they're profiting immensely right now, because they can borrow unlimited amounts of money at 0% interest rates, for example, and then they charge you 6% or 7 or 8 or 9 or 15 or 19+% on your credit card, for example. So we are witnessing, in my opinion, the largest, most catastrophic end times bubble, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that, end times bubble in the history of the world. We see it across all asset classes, whether or not it is stocks, whether or not it is real estate. We've seen the air let out a little bit in commodities, but I think that's more of an orchestration, specifically when we're talking about oil, the dissolution of OPEC. And then that just kind of goes to show you what a scam it is too. Remember how they told us there wasn't enough oil, peak oil theory, that justified the sky-high prices, but now there's too much of it. We don't have, there's so much supply that, the air has been let out, almost like out of a balloon, or a balloon being popped. So we're seeing this across all markets because, again, when money is free and you can borrow at zero, the international bankstas and the gangsters are using it to their advantage, and it's blowing up the stock market. We're seeing this with buybacks. A lot of companies, public companies, are buying back their shares at a record pace, which is also propelling the market higher because they can, because they've got access to cheap capital and there's nothing else to do with their cash. We're seeing banks around the world begin, and I think this just was rolled out in the UK, for example, and we've seen this in other parts of Europe. Banks are now charging customers, you, consumers, for your own deposits. So let's say you want to hold, $1,000 at the bank. They're going to actually send you a bill for that luxury so that they can hold on to your own money, by the way, that they created out of thin air, from nothing. Now, I haven't really talked about this topic in length, but what's interesting, and it's one of the topics I really follow, but with digital currency, for example, taking root in recent years, something that I think we could all see coming 10 plus years ago. And keep in mind, Google and these companies, they barely existed 10 plus years ago. All of this has really just changed recently in recent history. We are seeing a move from the gangsta cartel that makes up the too big to fail banksters that continue to rape us. We're seeing this with alternative currencies, like Bitcoin is probably the most popular that you've heard of, that many of you probably are following. Some of you might consider yourself experts in this area and know more than me, although I would say that I'm pretty studious in this area myself. We've got competing alternative currencies to Bitcoin, like Litecoin, a little bit less known. We have a new rollout of a currency called Steemit, which is also a social media platform, which I remain very, very skeptical about. I've gotten a lot of email inquiries, and I see a lot of YouTubers jumping on the bandwagon, and although I think it's a very good idea, if you don't know what it is, Steemit, and I guess I'm promoting it even though I shouldn't really be doing it, but for the sake of, using our intellectual minds to discuss the topic, I think I kind of have to. Again, I'm very skeptical of it, so this is not an endorsement. Although I think it's a really good idea. Steemit is a social media-based platform that pays you in digital currency, what they call Steam, or the equivalent of Steam dollars, to post relevant content. So you've probably seen some of the guests we've interviewed, for example, Jeff Berwick, Luke We Are Change are posting on Steemit, for example, and then their posts are being uprated maybe 1,000 Steam, or 2,000 Steam, or 15,000 Steam, or whatever it is. And the idea is that the content speaks for itself, and that people are paid to post, and then through an exchange market, which there's many exchanges that you can exchange out of these currencies into Bitcoin, and then back into the dollar, although you kind of have to jump through some hoops to do it. So I remain very skeptical, although I'm watching it. I do think it's a fantastic idea. I do think we'll see a push into this area, whether or not it's Steam, or it's the competing alternative currencies that are starting and beginning to bypass the traditional model. And I think it brings up a very important point, because people are so tired of these money changers and so tired of the system that they are working actively, I think the good people are, to take back the internet. We're even seeing this among, I forget the founder of the internet, what his name is, it's escaping me, so put it in the comment box. His mission now is to take it back. The inventor of the pop-up ad, for example, thinks that was a really bad idea. And we're seeing such major overt censorship and monopolization in the tech area right now. People are well aware of this, especially the truth seekers, the freedom fighters, the liberty lovers like you guys, and people are looking for alternatives. Whether or not that's alternative media or it's alternative currency. So we're seeing a lot of changes in this area. I think that the end result, again, post this election, is an absolute catastrophic implosion of not just U.S. financial markets, but financial markets in general. This is all, of course, the plan. People like George Soros own the stock market. The Federal Reserve can dictate policy and these kinds of things through fabricating liquidity in the markets with interest rates and quantitative easing and promoting buybacks and borrowing, etc. But I'm here to say, and again, no one's really talking about this yet because they're too focused on the election, and also with the market continuing to trickle higher and hit new all-time highs, it's just not popular to talk about, although it's the truth. It's all going to end very, 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 very badly. And nothing's changed since 2008 and 2009. Those money changers, the same people that we're bitching about, have only compounded the problem. And it will result in consequences. Now, I can't sit here and pretend to, share with you that I know, the exact playbook or how exactly this is going to unfold. But I think in general, you'll see a collapse in currency and potentially currencies around the world, especially the US dollar. I think war, which we are already engaged in war now, is a natural byproduct, which is why we see further destabilization in the Middle East. We're seeing further issues and, covert operations run by US intelligence in places like Syria. War, currency crisis, social unrest. I think that, I've talked about this, especially if Donald Trump is not elected commander-in-chief, expect even more division in a civil war, so to speak, and splintering off, further splintering here in the United States of America, which will only bring the relationships in America, right versus left, etc., to kind of a boiling point. All of this results in great, great instability, kind of like what we saw overnight in Italy with an entire town being demolished. It's not even there anymore, and I think there was like 30 people or something that have tragically died thus far. So those are my most personal thoughts this morning. I will be broadcasting more in studio. Also, ask me anything in the comment box below. Thank you for your tremendous support. I'm Christopher Green, hard hitting and in your face. Get it out everywhere. Subscribe on demand if you haven't already. $4.95 a month, $49.95 a year. It's the price of a cup of coffee, and you're helping us go to war with the mainstream.